Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Ottawa under the Planning Act. This video conference is also live streaming on YouTube. With me are my fellow panel members, Jocelyn Chandler, Stephen Lewis, Terrence Otto, and Martin Vervoort. My name is Fabian Poulin, and I will be chairing this hearing today. The procedure for this hearing will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with an agenda item in a different order. Committee members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or in opposition to each of the applications. Today, we'll hear oral submissions from any interested parties. Notice regarding minor variance applications, notwithstanding pre-consultation with staff, it is the responsibility of the applicant to identify all required variances accurately on the application to one, add a new variance or to increase an extent of a variance requested. This must be given in accordance with the Planning Act and may require the application to be recirculated for the next hearing date at a cost to the applicant at the prescribed fee. If an applicant amends their plans with no impact to the variances or to reduce the variances requested, recirculation may not be required. Appealing a decision of the committee. Decisions of the Committee of Adjustment may be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal for a fee within 20 days of the date of the written decision. Only the applicant, the minister, or a specified person or public body that has an interest in the matter may appeal the decision. A specified person does not include an individual or community association. As part of the statutory notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. This declaration must be on file today before we can hear the application. Without it, I may have to adjourn the application or administer an oath if necessary. Can the coordinator confirm that we've received all the statutory declarations? I believe we've not received any statutory declarations, therefore I will be administering the oath to all applicants. The committee may ask for a brief presentation of the application, followed by questions from members and submissions from the public. Please address your comments to the chair, starting with your name and spelling it if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. Committee limits presentations to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the chair's discretion. That's there. Finally, before we begin, we have 2 items of business to address. Does any member present need to declare an interest in any of the applications that are before us today or that are on the agenda of another committee panel? There are no declarations of interest. We also have to adopt the minutes of the last 2 public hearings. And I'd like to ask the panel if they will adopt minutes from the November 2nd hearing. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And I would like to ask for adoption of November 16th minutes. I was absent, so I will not be voting, but all those in favor, please vote to adopt these minutes. Those minutes are adopted. We also have to hear applications for this hearing. We'll deal firstly with any items that may be adjourned. I believe we have 2 items that there was a request for adjournment. There may not be now, I understand, but I'll ask for application number 5. This is having to do with 248 Old Quarry Road. And I'm looking for Jacob Eads. Mr. Eads, are you available? Mr. Eads, are you available?
Yes, I am.
Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Good, thanks. Are you looking to adjourn this application today?
No.
I'd like to proceed then with the application.
Yes, I provided some initial comments back yesterday, last minute.
Okay. And I'd like to ask the planner if he's got any comments with respect to that.
Morning, Chair.
Morning.
With respect to with the comments we received yesterday from the applicant, we have received them, but we do not agree that they're sufficient to address our concerns, we would still request, in consultation with our environmental planner, that a full EIS be submitted in advance of hearing the application. The application is within 2 watercourse setbacks and is covered by natural heritage features. No EIS was submitted, so in order to fully review the application, we would request a full professional EIS.
Okay, thanks. And Mr. Eads, does that change your mind about adjourning today?
Well, I mean, if it's absolutely required, then I guess that's that. But again, I thought, with the information provided and kind of my logic behind it, I believe it was worth a discussion.
It's your call, but you may run the risk of being refused today.
Well, I mean, I may as well stay on.
Okay, we'll hear it in order then. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Number 6, this application is also being requested to be adjourned. This having to do with 5134 Piperville Road. Mr. Barrett Wagger, are you available? Mr. Wagger.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
Yes, I am available, and
Great.
we would prefer not to adjourn the application. We feel confident that the form or the manner in which the conditions have been formatted by the city are certainly adequate to allow this application to proceed.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kokkonen, can you speak to this adjournment request on behalf of the city?
Good morning. Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, we are maintaining our adjournment request this morning. The applicants have yet to provide an EIS for this application. There are significant natural heritage features on the subject site, and that would be potentially fragmented by the proposed severance. If we were to proceed with hearing this application and the EIS were to be conducted as a condition, this would potentially create a lot which cannot be used in the future if the EIS were then to be would yield the result that the use is not acceptable on this lot, because this will be severed specifically for the use of a transformer station. So if the EIS comes back that there are issues, then we have created a lot which cannot be used for any future use, and we would like to avoid this situation.
Okay, Mr. Wagner, do you have any comments on that?
Yes, so I mean, I think it's probably best if we get into it through a kind of a formal discussion, but really the municipal transformer station being proposed in the future on this land to be severed by Hydro Ottawa will be subject to the Environmental Assessment Act. And so with that, it'll be subject to a Class EA approval. Through that process, an EIS is required, as well as a number of other technical studies and public consultation. We feel confident with current findings of the study, with it being in progress right now, that we can certainly move forward with this at this time. And timing is actually a key component of this situation, because if we were to move forward with a sequential application in terms of dealing with the EA process first and then coming back for the consent application, it simply wouldn't work timing wise, because we would still be subject to at least about 10 months to address conditions of the consent. And that results in delays which would not be acceptable for Hydro Ottawa, their shareholder, and ratepayers. It just would not be in the interest of the public.
Okay, so we'll proceed then in order, and we'll not adjourn this request. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now moving on to the top of the agenda, looking at item number 1, which has to do with 40 Carlisle Circle. And I'm looking for Mr. Vivekanandan. I'm sorry if I butchered your name, but are you available, Mr. Vivekanandan? I see your something. You're muted, sir. There you are. Good
Good
morning.
morning, Mr. Chair. And I
Good
know you
morning.
did not butcher the name. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'd like to administer the oath concerning the signposting on the property. Can you take that oath today?
Yes, I can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I do.
Thank you very much, sir. If you want to, I note that there are some concerns with from planning. Could you give us a brief description of your application today, sir?
Will do. Through the chair, if I can request that these slides be put up. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, staff, members of the public. My name is Vital and I'm a land use planner with McIntosh Perry. McIntosh Perry is the agent for Mr. Mark Seabrook, who's unable to attend this morning and sends his regrets. With respect to the proposed consent application, which is a lot line adjustment before you today for the lands at 40 Carlisle Circle. The property is a large vacant residential lot with frontage on Carlisle Circle. The subject lands are designated rural countryside in the City of Ottawa official plan. The lands are zoned rural residential subzone 2, rural exception 9 in the City of Ottawa zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. The proposal entails a lot line adjustment to add a 3.06 hectare parcel from the northerly portion of lands at 40 Carlisle Circle to the adjacent Canadian Gulf and Country Club lands. The northerly portion of 40 Carlisle Circle is currently used as an extension of the golf course. What I'm speaking to is actually on the previous slide. It's specifically an extension of a driving range at the Canadian Gulf and Country Club. Both properties are under the ownership of corporations owned by Mr. Mark Seabrook. The retained parcel will be approximately 0.85 hectares in area, and following the lot line adjustment will remain a vacant residential lot. Further to pre-consultation with the city on January 17th, 2022, a zoning bylaw amendment will be pursued as a condition of provisional consent. And the zoning bylaw amendment will ensure that the lands to be added will match the zoning of the Canadian Gulf and Country Club lands, which is zoned open space subzone 1A. The lands are currently vacant of structures and no further development is proposed on either parcel. The lot line adjustment is intended to capture the existing and ongoing use of the subject lands. A hydrogeological assessment and terrain analysis was completed and submitted by McIntosh Perry in support of the consent application. And it's understood that the city is requesting some revisions to the hydro-G as a condition of approval. And we have no objections and a revised report can be provided to the city. It's also understood that the city is requesting a scoped EIS be prepared as a condition of approval, specifically in order to establish an appropriate development envelope on the retained lot. There has been preliminary review by McIntosh Perry's biologist, and the EIS will be provided as a condition, so we have no objection to that. Next slide, please. So some historical context for this land. The consent process for the lands was first initiated in 2013 and was subsequently paused as a result of RVCA involvement relating to a culvert that was installed on the driving range portion of the property. As required by the RVCA, a drainage memorandum addressing the adequacy of the culvert was submitted on August 19th, 2021. And this was to the satisfaction of the Conservation Authority. So on November 8, 2021, the RVCA provided confirmation that the adequacy of the culvert has been sufficiently addressed and that they have no further concerns in the advancement of the proposed consent before you today. And the current consent process was reinitiated by way of a January 17th, 2022 pre-consultation with the City of Ottawa. Next slide, please. A quick policy summary here. Section 1.1.5 of the provincial policy statement provides that municipalities should direct residential development and lot creation that is locally appropriate. and requires that development shall be compatible with the rural landscape and be sustained by rural service levels. As the City of Ottawa official plan, the subject lands are designated general rural area in the previous City of Ottawa official plan, and rural countryside in the current and recently approved official plan. The points on this slide reference the previous official plan, which was approved by the ministry last month. So I'll speak very briefly to the new sections of the current OP that the staff report also addresses.
You have about 1 minute left, Mr. Vivek.
Yeah, section 9.2 of the official plan provides that a general a general rural area can accommodate a variety of uses for a rural location, and both a golf course and low intensity residential development are permitted. And as previously discussed, a zoning bylaw amendment will be pursued in order to ensure that both the lands to be added and the retained lot conform to the city's zoning bylaw. Again, the proposed lot line adjustment conforms to the applicable policies of the City of Ottawa official plan, captures the existing use of the subject lands, and is, in my opinion, constitutes good planning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I'd now like to ask Mr. Kirkkonen to have some comments on behalf of the city.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the agent did a good job touching on our concerns with this application. Our first concern is the natural heritage features that are located on site. We have requested that as a condition of the severance that the applicants provide a scoped EIS and identify an appropriate development envelope to address this concern. And with that, as a severance condition, we would be satisfied of this concern. In addition to that, we also have concerns regarding the potential hydrogeological sensitivity of the lot. As such, we are continuing to go through the report that was submitted, and we will be providing fulsome comments to the applicant for them to address as a revised hydrogeological report as a condition of the severance. In addition to that, as noted, we are requesting rezoning of the lots to be added to the existing golf course, just to create one uniform zoning, being the O1A zone, as well as a rezoning of the retained portion to recognize the now smaller than permitted lot area due to the 9R exception zone. Again, we feel confident that all of these can be addressed as conditions for this application.
Great. So, and addressing this to the applicant, are you aware of all those 8 conditions, Mr. Vivek?
I am, Mr. Chair.
And you agree with them?
I do.
Great. Thank you. I'd just like to ask the conservation partners for their comments at this time.
Hi, through the chair. As the applicant indicated, there has been work that's provided by the applicant to the RVCA's satisfaction regarding the existing water courses on the property, as well as culverts that were located to ensure that there's no impacts on flooding. That work has been completed last year, and there are no other concerns from the Conservation Authority at this time. The city addressed Hydro-G, which the Conservation Authority would agree with, but the Hydro-G components for severances are deferred to the city in this matter. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Long. I'd now like to ask panel for any comments they happen to have. Mr. Lewis.
No comments other than I sure miss the days when a lot line adjustment only required a 50-12. A lot of stuff there. The question I got, was that lot buildable beyond before, Mr. Kirkkonen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the lot was buildable before. However, it required a specific lot minimum, which it did meet. And now with the lot line adjustment, it is going below that lot minimum area required.
Okay, I just questioned if it was buildable before with groundwater, road widening, sensitive soils. But anyway, if the applicant's okay with it, so am I.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Otto, any questions or comments? Mr. Vervoort, any questions or comments?
No, I'm fine with the application, and I think all of the proposed conditions address any concerns regarding hydrogeological or zoning or EIS matters. So I'm in favor of the application.
Thank you. Miss Chandler, any comments? I didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. No additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now ask the panel for approval of this application with all 8 conditions. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved. Thank you very much. Now I'll move on to application number 2. This has to do with 30 Ember Glow Court. We're going to hear both applications 2 and 3. I'm looking for Mr. Gord Scott. Mr. Scott, are you available? Mr. Scott, I don't see you here.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you people today?
Fine, thanks. I'd like to administer an oath concerning the sign posting on your property. Can I administer that oath to you today?
You may, yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I do.
Great. So I note for the panel that there are no concerns from planning committee. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 conditions. Are you aware of those conditions, sir? Mr. Scott? Do you agree with those conditions?
Yes.
And I note for the panel that the conservation partners do not object to this application as well. So I'd like to move right to the panel. Ask the panel if they've got any comments or questions. Mr. Vervoort?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if there's a registered speaker on this particular application.
Just a second. Yes, there is. I'm sorry about that. Mr. Watson or Mrs. Watson, are you available? I see Mike Watson.
Hello.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning.
I understand you have some comments you'd like to make on this application.
Well, we don't right now, but we thought we should say we were attendees just or panelists just to make sure that we could have a voice, I guess. Our concern was about the water, as were most of our neighbors.
Okay. There is one of the conditions is a grading and drainage plan has to be submitted. So it should take care of that that concern you may have.
Thank you.
Okay. One other question.
Sure.
Once construction starts, how long can the lots remain empty?
Mr. Kukkonen, or is it Mr. Graham? Can you answer that question for
I could be wrong on this, but I believe it's up to the property owner when and what they wish to build. I don't think there's a timeline that we would require.
Okay, the reason I'm asking this question is I know of a house where it was removed and the house has been removed, the foundation's still there, and the yard is nothing but weeds surrounded by houses, and it's been like that for 1.5 years. I'm just concerned that that could happen.
I think you can address some of that through property standards at the city.
Okay.
And request them to take some action if it's out of line.
Okay, no, that's fine. The main concern is the water. That yard, the back has flooded consistently as long as we've lived here. And we're worried that the water will be displaced into surrounding yards. And you said that will be addressed, so that's perfect.
Good. Okay, thank you very much for your submission.
Thank you.
Moving on then to the panel, Mr. Vervoort, have you got any comments or questions?
Just a question for Mr. Scott. So what's the plan here as far as demolishing the existing house and then moving forward with construction? Is there a timeline that your client has in mind?
Yes, we intended removing the house in early March. And then begin the construction phase thereafter, April. We're going to move rather quickly. We've already arranged for the house to be moved by a mover, and the foundation will then obviously be demolished right away, and the project will begin.
Okay, thank you. And just for Mr. Graham, I'm assuming you don't have any further comments on this?
No, through you, Mr. Chair, no further comments.
Okay. Subject to the conditions which the applicant has accepted, I'm in favor of the consent application and the accompanying minor variance application.
Thank you. Mr. Otto, any questions or comments?
Oh, I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Chandler, any comments?
No comments or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Fine with both applications.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to move on first, the application number 2, the consent application. I'd like to ask the panel to approve this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. This application is approved. I'd like to now move on to application number 3 for the minor variances. There are 5 conditions that need to be fulfilled for this application to proceed. So I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify for the record, the conditions apply to the severances.
That's right. And yes, that's correct. It applies to the 7. Thank you. Now moving on to application number 4. This has to do with 4104 Torbolton Ridge Road. Ms. Zander, are you available?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members.
Good morning, Ms. Zander. Are you able to take the oath concerning the sign posting on the property?
I am not, and my client, Mr. Wilson, is trying to phone into the hearing and is having trouble when he calls the phone-in number that was provided by your staff. He cannot get through. I just sent an email to your staff to see if they've heard from him. I don't know if there's a phone number showing up here.
There was one just a minute ago.
Yes, I saw that.
613, and then the last 3 digits, 619. Can you unmute yourself, sir? Or ma'am? Good morning. I see that you've unmuted yourself.
I don't think I'm the person you're looking for. I think I'm on another file.
Okay, are you looking for, is this Mr. Wilson?
No, no, it's not.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Mr. Chair, we may have to set this aside for a moment while I get my client connected here.
Thank you, Ms. Sander. We'll move on to application number 5 then. Application number 5 has to do with 248 Old Quarry Road. Mr. Eads, are you available? I see your name down there, Mr. There you go.
Yeah.
Good morning.
I'm here. Good morning. How are you?
Good, thanks. Are you able to take the oath concerning the sign posting on the property today?
I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I swear, yes.
Great. So I'd like to ask you to give us a brief description of your application today. And remind you that there's only 5 minutes to be able to do that.
So we're applying to build a single-family home on a vacant lot at 248 Old Quarry Road. I guess the submission went in The variances requested are for a setback from the Ottawa River for a component of the septic system. And there's also a drainage ditch along the right of the property that requires setback variance as well. Initial comments came back from this, I guess, from the panel requesting a scoped EIS, a slope stability report, and a planting plan. We did provide the slope stability report as of yesterday. The requirement for an EIS, I provided some comments back to the panel late yesterday afternoon. Mike, I guess, was my response. Essentially noting that the construction activities are, I guess, well beyond the, I guess, around 6 meters past the 100-year floodplain. So there really won't be any sort of activity that will affect, I guess, the waterfront or the river in any way, as long as same with the ditch. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Mr. Graham, can you give some comments on behalf of the city?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the proposed development is within the setbacks of 2 watercourses, as the applicant said, and we recognize that this site is constrained, and as such, after consulting with environmental planning staff, we requested that an EAS be completed to ensure minimal negative impacts to both adjacent watercourses. And to get an exception from these watercourses, it's a requirement within our official plan to submit an EIS. We received the comments from the applicant yesterday. We don't believe that those are sufficient to address our concerns. The edge of the septic bed is 16 meters from the high water mark of the Ottawa River. The edge of the top bank to the adjacent drainage dish is 3 meters from their proposed septic location. These are very close to the watercourses, and as such, we think a EIS be submitted upfront to fully evaluate this application.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Eads.
Okay. Yeah, like I say, that my biggest thing was that it is close, yes, but you say there won't be any sort of disturbance to that area because there's no need for construction activities to take place in that area. So that was my, I guess, my rebuttal for that. So we can say if it is policy, we can certainly get getting an EIS done.
Okay. I'd like to ask the conservation partners for their comments.
Yes. Thank you.
Good morning.
Hi. Through you, Mr. Chair, the Conservation Authority notes that the Ottawa River floodplain, as well as that tributary or ditch to the Ottawa River, is located on the subject property. We note that the tributary does not have an MVCA regulation limit. Staff have visited the site, and the tributary is a fairly well-established watercourse. Since the 30-meter setback from the tributary cannot be achieved with the proposed development, MVCA recommends a minimum development setback of 5 meters to help mitigate any potential impacts on future development from both flooding and erosion hazards. We have received a permit application for the construction of the dwelling and the sewage system. The application is currently on hold until the planning approvals are obtained.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to ask the panel for any questions or comments they may have. Ms. Chandler?
So there are some concerns from some adjacent property owners. Has a permit been submitted to the Ottawa Septic System Office?
I believe it has, yes. So we hired an engineering firm to do a septic design, and I know there was some back and forth with the city. So I believe the current stamped septic design is on the 2nd revision. So yes, I believe they have already been in contact with the city septic office.
Okay, and how would you propose to address the 5-meter setback from the center line of ditch that's being requested by the Conservation Authority? Because right now it's showing 4.7 meters and it looks pretty tight, to tell you the truth.
Mr. Eads?
You say, so the 5 meters, is that pertaining to the septic system or the house itself? I apologize. You have to...
Sorry, my understanding from Mississippi Valley was they were recommending a 5-meter setback from structures, which includes all the components of a septic system, to the adjacent water course.
The only way would be to look at updating or I guess revising the septic design to meet that.
I'm not sure where your septic design can go from this point. I mean, this lot is really, really small. And I guess overall, I think you're going to have some additional challenges to work out still. With both with probably the septic office and Mississippi Valley. I don't think that's going to change anything with respect to the distance from the Ottawa River. I actually don't think you can do much better than what you've got here. I'm not sure. Fundamentally, my concern is that your second variance to permit a septic system to be located 2.91 meters from the top of bank of a water course or water body, whether that, once you get this all sorted out, whether that variance is still going to be good for you. It's a little bit at your own risk.
Yeah, I mean the I guess the water course itself, like I sent some photos there from about a month ago, but it's a very, the water flows through that ditch are very, very minimal. I could say in the spring it collects water from I guess the other side of the road. Again, we've been down there through the spring and there is water flows, but even in the springtime it's minimal. So I mean, as of right now, that ditch is dry, so wasn't too much of a concern for us, to be honest. And like I say, with the neighboring property to the right, the structures, I guess on that property are quite close to the ditch, and they've been there, it seems, for quite some time without any issues. So.
Yeah, no, I understand it's not an issue for the structures. It's more of an issue for the water course. That's actually what that setback is about, protecting the water course from the people rather than the stuff from the water course. I mean, like I said, I don't think you can do much better on that site plan. It's very tight. I think probably your neighbors would probably like to put their comments in too, although I will say by the looks of the site plan that all the required setbacks under the building code are met in terms of existing wells on the adjacent property. So I'll leave it at that. I don't think there's any major flags. As far as the EIS goes, it is a policy of the OP to require it. I'm not sure what it's going to demonstrate.
Yeah, and that was kind of my thing, is that they say that there's really no construction activity or work happening in the area that I guess would trigger the EIS, right? Which is, I assume, the edge of the river and the river itself, and that habitat, right? Like you say,
the trigger is definitely there. It's just what it would demonstrate. I'm not sure. It might be actually not. Here's my one important question to planning staff. The EIS, what is your expectation that it would show? Like, how big an EIS is this? Is this an EIS that can be done scoped by the property owner? Or are you looking for a full-blown, hire a professional biologist, conduct an EIS, identify a development envelope approach?
Through you, Chair, after consulting with an environmental planner on our staff, they requested that the applicant submit a professional EIS addressing natural vegetation and the ecological function of the setback area, the nature of the abutting water body, including the presence of a floodplain, and the need to demonstrate that there will be no negative impacts on adjacent fish habitat, and included in the site plan to have a planting plan adjacent to each water course.
Okay. I'd like to hear from the other members.
Mr. Harrigan, do you have something to say?
Thank you. To you, Mr. Chair, I was just going to add a comment to my colleague, Mr. Graham, just noting about the site alterations that also occur in here. So even though the septic system will be 2.9 meters from the top of bank, for the top of bank for the water course. The site alterations will be considerably closer. You do have to get construction equipment around there, and it does require a lot of disturbances to it. Being 2.9 meters close to that ditch is already going to cause issues with grade and connectivity to that, and may require alterations to that ditch, which is already experiencing some erosion concerns to that. So there are some already potential negative impacts that are occurring on site, and this proposed development may make it worse. And given that it is so close to the Allwater River, with potential species at risk habitat and aquatic habitat and amphibian habitat, with these two water courses connecting, there are just a lot of concerns here that would require the professional to go in and do an evaluation of the site. It is currently vacant, so it is just covered in natural features right now, and it really is at this point trying to find the best case scenario for this property.
Thank you, Mr. Harrigan. I'd like to ask panel member Vervoort if you've got any questions or comments.
Well, it seems to me that it's premature almost to hear this application since we don't have the EIS, which is required by the official plan provisions. My inclination would be to adjourn this and have that completed so we have a full application in front of us. But I guess the alternative would be to impose a condition that the building permit not be issued until planning and development is signed off on an EIS.
Thank you. Mr. Otto?
With Mr. Vervoort, I think they should do the EIS first.
Thank you.
That would be the best bet for them.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
I'd be happy to support the application with the EIS to follow.
Thank you.
Like the reason being, then the applicant knows it's passed if he does his EIS. You know, if we say come back with the EIS, something else could come up in the meantime, right? Let them get on.
The EIS may provide some more information that may require other things to be completed by the applicant, and that we didn't even have a chance to consider here. So for that reason, I would have a problem because the application is not complete. So I really think he should adjourn and then come back after he's got the application completed with a completed EIS to the satisfaction of the city. That's my position. So I guess Mr. East, do you have any questions or comments? Would you like to adjourn now and go and get that completed?
Like you say, if it's a requirement, then you know, we want to satisfy those requirements. So we'll certainly look at getting one. It'll certainly take some time. Obviously, I guess the EIS can't be done until I guess the next growing season. So see you next fall, pretty much.
Okay, so we've got two options. If we want to adjourn this application today, all those in favor, all panel members in favor of adjourning that application, please raise your hands. All those against? Okay, so your application will be adjourned, Mr. Eads, and we'll do it sine die, which means you'll have to come back and then get another date. Okay.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. Now we'll go back to Ms. Zander and application number 4. And Ms. Zander, are you available? Good morning, Ms. Zander.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Unless staff are seeing my client here, he tells me he's still unsuccessful in phoning into the hearing.
I see a phone number there, last 3 digits, 866. Yes. Is that your client?
That should be him, yes.
Okay. Can we unmute?
In case the owner can hear this, the unmute is *6. You got it.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Great. Can you take? Yes, I do. Yes, I can. I'd like to administer an oath concerning the sign posting on your property. Can you take that oath this morning?
Yep.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
Yes, I put it up on the 19th of November and it's up there now for sure.
That's great. Thank you very much, sir. Ms. Zander,
Okay.
can you just briefly tell us about your application today?
Yes, I can. Thank you kindly for accommodating that. So I've been retained by Mr. and Mrs. Wilson to assist with 2 severances from their property on Torbolton Ridge Road. I don't know if staff have the severance sketch at their fingertips. I can speak to that. The intent is to create, let that pop up. Thank you. To create 2 approximately 8,000 square meter lots that would front to Torbolton Ridge Road and retain a large property with a house and some agricultural and outbuildings, over 36 hectares. The property is in the rural countryside designation in the official plan and zoned rural countryside. You can see on the sketch prepared by my office that we did consider the minimum distance separation calculation for nearby agricultural buildings, and the 2 severed lots are entirely outside of that influence area that's around the barns on the retained property. There are some natural heritage features in the vicinity of the site. You can see the 2 severed lots are outside of the natural heritage features on the subject property. There are some wetlands mapped across Torbolton Ridge Road by the Conservation Authority. We had some early discussion and that mapping was revised based on the field visit by Conservation Authority staff. So the 2 lots are entirely outside of natural heritage features. The city requested a noise study and that was completed to address the railway corridor that's on the south side of this property. It's my understanding that that is a trail, a railway corridor, I guess, in your policy, but there is no rail activity there. It's a recreational trail. The noise study was completed and reviewed by staff, and recommendations that follow out of that I see are included in the conditions prepared by staff. There are some references to vibration in that study. I would suggest, I'm not sure what a vibration study would achieve here because there's no rail activity in the corridor. So I think the noise consultant spoke to vibration to the extent that they could. And as you can see on our sketch, we have allowed for a 30-meter development setback on the lot that is closest to the railway corridor. And that still leaves more than 3/4 of an acre of building area on the Severance 1. Severance 2 is far enough from the corridor that it's not impacted by that. If I could just speak to the conditions, and I'm looking at the staff report on another screen, so I'm looking over here. Staff have recommended the completion of a vibration study as one of the conditions. And as I noted, vibration is referenced in the noise study, but because there's no rail activity there, I'm not sure what the vibration study would evaluate. So condition 6 references the need for a vibration study, but I note that condition 9, which requires a development agreement. They're not fully numbered, but one of the last clauses under condition 9 says that as the requirement for the issuance of a building permit, and there are some terms there that an owner or purchaser would be required to consider when they apply for a building permit. Item A says to identify a development envelope setback a minimum of 75 meters from the rail corridor. Sorry, I just want to find the correct clause. Yes, and all future development must be contained within the defined development envelope unless the owner prepares and submits a vibration study to the satisfaction of the city. So that statement, which staff have recommended be included in a development agreement, would appear to allow the completion of the vibration study at the time of development in the future. So that would certainly be my preference, the way condition 9 is written. However, that appears to kind of contradict condition 6, which is asking for the vibration study as a condition of severance approval. Otherwise, I don't have any concerns with the conditions, but I'm looking for some clarification on the vibration study. And I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to ask our conservation partners for some comments if they have any.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the Conservation Authority confirms the presence of the watercourses and wetlands on the subject property. The regulated features are all located on the retained lands. So the severed lands will be located over 30 meters from also those nearby watercourses. Any development within NVCA's regulation limit will require prior written permission.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. Kukkonen if he's got any comments on behalf of the city.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I will keep my comments related to the noise and vibration aspects, as the other concerns or potential concerns have been dealt with through the revised wetland mapping. So with respect to the noise report that was submitted, this was reviewed by our engineer, and yes, that did help determine the conditions that we have requested as a part of this application. As for the vibration component, it is a requirement of our official plan, or under the official plan that this application was reviewed under, section 4.8.8 of the old official plan, that requires any development within 75 meters of a railway corridor to be supported by a vibration study. The actual requirements of this vibration study, I think that would have to be a conversation with our reviewing engineer to determine how this would be scoped in this case. But I can confirm that in spite of this being used as a recreational trail currently, we still require to do the due diligence because a railway corridor could be established at any moment, and we need to be satisfied that that the development or proposed development would be satisfactory if it were to be established in the future.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes. I was just going to touch on, lastly, the discrepancy between the request for a vibration study for one lot versus the development envelope for the other lot. The reason why there's a discrepancy there is because the parcel to be known as 4062 toward Bolton Ridge Road is entirely within that 75-meter setback. It is my opinion that a development envelope could not be established on this lot outside of the 75-meter mark. So that's the reason why we are requesting the study in support of that parcel. However, the further parcel you could establish a development envelope outside of that 75-meter buffer.
Thank you, sir. Now I'd like to ask the panel for any questions, comments they may have. Mr. Otto?
Just one question. It sounds to me like there are no rails on this rail line. And the second comment would be, who owns the rail line? Is it CNCP?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Currently, it's our understanding there are no rails currently existing on this rail line, and it is owned by City of Ottawa.
Anything further, Mr. Otto? Okay. Mr. Revort, any questions or comments?
Just for Mr. Kukkonen, so how would you do a vibration study if there's no current use of that railway corridor? And I guess my other question is, like, we wouldn't know what kind of a train would be running over there. Like, it could be a heavy diesel commuter train, or it could be a light rail train. Like, how do we? I don't understand how you do a vibration study if there's nothing there at the present time.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe inferences would have to be made, potentially making reference to normal corridor conditions and extrapolating from there. I know that there are references and guidelines that can be followed. I believe, bear with me just a moment. Yes, under the guidelines for new development in proximity to railway operations, there is a reference manual, and perhaps there is some guidance within that that our engineer would recommend that should be followed. However, I do not know the complete contents of that reference manual.
Do you have any comment on that, Ms. Sander?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. That's the same question I kind of asked, that member Vervoort has asked. I guess if the committee is going to leave that condition, my client and I will have to discuss the scope of that study directly with staff.
But your position is that it should be not a condition at this point, and that it should only be a condition once we're at the building permit stage. Is that correct?
That, I think that would make more sense. Again, I don't know what we would be evaluating right now without a rail corridor or any development plans, but.
But then I guess my question is, how do we ensure that that's triggered at the building permit stage, if that's your position?
Well, it's the way staff have worded the condition, it would be written into the development agreement that it would be required at the building permit stage, along with the hydrogeology requirements and so on, that all of those things would get triggered prior to issuance of a building permit through the development agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, I'd like to put a little, try and put some common sense to this. The train tracks are gone. The city of Ottawa owns the train tracks. The odds of a train are very slim, at least not in my lifetime. Agreement on title that there's a rail corridor there, does that not suffice? Forget the vibration study, forget the noise on title study, just put the fact that there's a railway corridor there. I support the application with taking out number 6 and 9.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Chandler.
A little bit of context. This is the Beachburg corridor, and I believe it was acquired by the city just a couple of years ago. It's fairly recent. It doesn't have rail infrastructure on it. And my recollection is it was purchased for the purpose of being a recreational corridor, with the acknowledgement that at some time in the future, it would be available as a transportation corridor. So long way out, but that it could be used for not like freight train, but as a, you know, some part of an LRT or something. So that was the context that I was thinking about this in. And my inclination is that if a vibration study was to play into this at all, it either played into there should be no lot adjacent to it, which is not the position of the city. So then it's just whether there's any mitigative measures that should apply to the construction of a building there, in which case I agree that it would just be part of a building permit process triggered through a development agreement.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'm also in agreement with Mr. Lewis. Take out number 6 condition. Don't need to do it. You can't do it now. I think one member suggested that NRC has a huge vibrating machine that could come out, but it'd be a hell of an expense, and I don't think it's worthwhile doing that at this time. So I would be in support of the application without just only the vibration study being removed. So to that end, I'm going to ask the panel for approval of this application without the vibration study. That's condition number 6. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved. Thank you very much, Ms. Zander.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, just for the record on this one, I would just dissent on the omission of the condition number 6 and would recommend that it be put in the development agreement, just for the record.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Moving on to application number 6. Application number 6 has to do with 5134 Piperville Road. Mr. Wagger, are you available? Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning again, Mr. Chairman.
I would like to administer an oath concerning the signposting. Can you take that oath this morning?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, as instructed, and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I swear.
Thank you. So I would like you you've got 5 minutes to be able to present your application today. So please proceed.
So I do have a brief presentation, and before I run through that, I just want to preface it a bit with some context here, because I think it will really help in streamlining the discussion following the presentation. So The main purpose why we're here is for Hydro Ottawa to be able to address current and future electricity demands within this area of the city, and specifically to increase reliability in the existing distribution network. The process has been going on for approximately a year now, and through that process, due diligence has occurred. A number of sites have been evaluated. I'm sure the committee can appreciate that when you're looking for an appropriate site for a new transformer station, the first check mark is to ensure that there's a distribution corridor there. So first off, that's number one, is that the property has to be abutting a corridor. And then of course, there's a number of other criteria to be checked into to make sure that there's actually land along that corridor, which is appropriate within that area to service. So again, only so many sites actually meet that criteria. The project itself is required to go through the EA approval process, as I had mentioned earlier. And this is a very rigorous study, consultation, review process, which also requires an EIS to be completed as a part of that process. And the EIS to be completed through that would meet or exceed the standards typically required by the city's EISs. The other points I'd like to make is just that addressing the EIS as part of a condition of this application, there's absolutely no risk to the city, none whatsoever. It is fully on Hydro Ottawa if the decision is made to grant this severance today, and an EIS is completed and ready to be distributed to the city as the condition requires, and as a development agreement is to be imposed, where Hydro Ottawa enters into with the city to their satisfaction. Then if that EIS is not satisfactory, well, the severance can't be perfected, it will lapse, and Hydro Ottawa will be forced to look at another site. That is a risk they are willing to take in order to maintain a concurrent application timeline between the consent application and the EA approval process, because at the end of the day, it will save them at least 8 to 12 months when considering all of the other conditions to be addressed, which is critical because, again, as I'd mentioned earlier, they have a shareholder, being the City of Ottawa, their owner, and then they're also responsible to their ratepayers. The other last point I'd like to make before going through the presentation is just that the Conservation Authority has reviewed this, and they have absolutely no concern with the manner of dealing with the EIS as a condition. So
You have
all that
2 minutes, Mr. Barrett.
all that to say, I will fly through the presentation. Please move to slide number 2. So the site is located in the southeast rural area of the city, just west of the intersection of Piperville Road and Farmers Way. And this area is essentially surrounded with agricultural lands and rural residential lots. The submitted severance sketch describes the severed lands as being 1.6 hectares and the retained lands as 4.8 hectares, retained being in the green, severed in the red in the image. The lands to be severed consist of previously cleared meadow for a depth from the road of approximately 95 meters, with the remainder of the site being forested. Next slide, please. The site is designated and zoned rural countryside in the city's OP and zoning bylaw. The intended land use for the severed land is a municipal transformer station, which is defined as a public utility in those documents, and it's a permitted non-residential use that will not require private services. The existing residential use on the land to be retained is a permitted land use and complies fully with zoning. Next slide. Actually, please move to slide 6, the last slide. So this slide provides street view context. I believe it's coming, slide 6, of the site and surrounding area. I think we're still stuck on slide 4 here. I'm just holding the presentation so we can get that slide lined up. There we go. So street view context is shown here in this slide. The top 2 photos are views looking southwest, and they show the adjacent Hydro 1 corridor and the land to be severed. bottom two photos are views looking east, and they show the land to be severed and the land to be retained. In closing, it's our opinion that the proposed severance represents good land use planning that is in the public interest and that it has regard for Section 5124 of the Planning Act. And as such, we recommend that consent be granted by the committee today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weger. I'd like to ask Mr. Kukkonen if he's got any comments.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I would just like to make one mention on the floor. It was brought to my attention that the conditions submitted as a part of the report include 2 number 1s due to a misnumbering. There should be 6 conditions in total listed 1 through 6 rather than 1, 1, and so on from there. So that's just my brief amendment. With respect to Mr. Weiger's presentation, although we do prefer it if the environmental impact study is provided up front, as long as the applicant knows that it is their risk that this condition may become unclearable, we are prepared to proceed in that fashion. I will note that the City of Ottawa does have different environmental considerations than the other regulating bodies, so it will be a separate review by our environmental planner, and he will need to be satisfied with the report provided. However, we are prepared to proceed with that as a condition. Yeah, and aside from that, just one last mention. We are requesting that the property be rezoned to recognize the future use. It was noted by the applicant that transformer stations are permitted in every zone. However, since we are recommending that no hydrogeological report is provided, we want to ensure that there is no future use on site that requires any private servicing, being a residential use or anything of that nature that requires servicing. So the zoning would reflect that.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Weiger, you're aware of the 6 conditions, right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
And you're in agreement with those 6 conditions?
Yes, we are.
Great. Thank you. Conservation partners, I note that they don't object to this application, but that they are noting that any interference with the watercourse may require a permit from the South Nation Conservation Authority. Okay, so for that end, I'd like to ask the planning. Oh, no, sorry. We have one registered speaker, Mr. Aurel Labelle. Mr. Labelle, are you available?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Good morning.
Would you like to make some comments today with respect to this?
Well, I think my comments and questions were addressed. Just recently, yesterday, I received a response from, I guess it was Mr. Fraser Baston. And I haven't had a chance to digest them all, the responses, but the questions are being addressed. And I don't have any further questions today.
Okay.
But if I do, I will respond back.
Great. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to ask the panel for their comments. Mr. Lewis.
I have no comments. Obviously, we need a generating a station or whatever, a transformer station, but I always find it interesting to see 2 members of a family fighting, Hydro Ottawa and the planning department. Good luck, folks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Revort.
Although in this case, the EIS hasn't been submitted yet, I think it's appropriate to make an exception because the project is going through the environmental assessment process, which should address all of those concerns. And in this case, there is some urgency, it appears, for this project to be completed. So I'm in favor of the application with the proposed conditions.
Thank you. Ms. Chandler?
I agree with Mr. Vervoort.
Thank you. Ms. Otto? Mr. Otto?
In support of the application.
Great. Thank you very much. I'd like to now ask the panel for approval of this application with all 6 conditions. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Mr. Weiger. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Okay, now we're moving on to application number 7. Application number 7 has to do with 4949 Navin Road. Mr. Freeman, are you available? Mr. Freeman? I see your name. You're muted, sir.
Good morning, Chair and members of committee.
Good morning. I'd like to administer an oath concerning the signposting for the property. Can you do that today?
Yes, I can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I swear that.
Thank you very much. For the committee, I note that there are no concerns from the planning department. And I note that the conservation partners have one condition. The condition is an EIS with respect to natural heritage features and fish habitat. Are you aware of those, Mr. Freeman?
Yes, we are aware of the conditions.
And do you support the conditions?
Yep.
And the planning department has 6 conditions. Are you aware of those conditions?
Yes, we are aware of the conditions.
And you support them?
Yep.
Great. Thank you very much. I'd like to move to the panel and see if the panel has any comments or questions. Mr. Lewis.
No questions. I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Otto.
No questions. I'm in support.
Ms. Chandler. You're muted, ma'am.
No questions or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Revort.
I just wondered if were there any other comments from planning? It seems fairly straightforward and everything's tied up. Did Mr. Graham have anything else?
No, with all of our conditions, we're satisfied with the application. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Graham. Yeah, I'm in favor of the application with the proposed conditions.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel now for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you very much. Now moving on to application number 8. This has to do with 2160 Phelan Road. Mr. Shipman, are you available? Mr. Shipman? Oh, there you are. You're muted, sir. There you are. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I'd like to administer an oath concerning the signposting. Can you take that oath this morning?
I can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I do.
Thank you. I note for the panel that there are no concerns from planning and there are no objections from our conservation partners. On planning side, they have requested 6 conditions. Are you aware of those conditions, Mr. Shipman?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I've reviewed the conditions and we're in agreement with all of them.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel for any comments they may have. Ms. Chandler.
I have no comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Good with it.
Mr. Otto.
Support. Thank you.
Mr. Vervoort.
No comments or concerns.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel now for approval of this application with all 6 conditions. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Mr. Shipman. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we're on to application number 9. This has to do with 1156 and 1162 River Road. Mr. Chatter, are you available? Mr. Chatter?
Hi, my name is Nikita and Nikita Jariwala, and I'm here with Tim Chatter. I believe he should be on the call. However, I'm not sure I see him right. Oh, there he is. I will be able to take the oath for this application, and we also have a presentation prepared.
Great. So here's the oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
Yes.
Great. So this time you've got 5 minutes to present your application, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could just go next slide, please. Great. So as I mentioned, myself and Tim Chatter have been retained by Ken Gordon Holdings Inc., who are the property owners for 1156 and 1162 River Road. This property is located east of Manotick along River Road, and it's a historical settlement area, and the dwellings predate the amalgamation of the city in 2001 and before the regional municipality in 1969. The purpose of the reciprocal consent applications is to provide separate titles for two existing residential uses for municipal tax purposes. As I mentioned, the dwellings were built prior to 1961, and each of the dwellings have their own access, private septic system, and private well. Next slide. So on this slide on the left, you can see the survey, which is indicating where we're drawing the line. And on the right side, you can see a satellite image of the current current existing development. So as I mentioned, each of these, you can see that there is the existing driveway. There are the two dwellings, and each of them have their own systems. So really through these reciprocal consent applications, we are seeking recognition of existing development. Next slide. So each of the proposed lots will have a frontage of 34.09 meters. The lot at 1162 River Road will have an area of 2,578 square meters. And the lot at 1156 River Road will have an area of 2,147 square meters. We are not proposing any physical changes as a result of this application, and the resulting lots from these consents will be similar in lot area and frontage to all of the lots located along this stretch of the river and River Road. Both of the proposed lots conform to the standards of the zoning bylaw, and the zoning respects the historic nature of the settlement. So the zoning bylaw, these lots are zoned as R8, which is rural residential subzone 8. Next slide. So a quick policy review here. So for the provincial policy statement, these applications would demonstrate an efficient use of rural infrastructure and promotes diversification of the economic base. As such, the consents are consistent with the PPS. I'm going to jump down to the zoning bylaw at the bottom here. So as I previously mentioned, the proposed lots do adhere to all of the rural residential subzone 8 provisions, and such these consents would comply to the requirements of the zoning bylaw. Coming back to the City of Ottawa official plan, it is staff's interpretation that, and we believe the committees as well, that we would be looking at the 2003, the old official plan. So these the property is designated in the general rural area, and residential uses are permitted, which is the existing development. The residential uses on the lots are properly serviced, and the existing lots have not had any record of problems. We understand that the proposed lots are undersized to the requirements of the official plan, which state that the lots should be 0.8 hectares. However, we would note that these lots do conform to zoning, and therefore our interpretation is that these lots are deemed to conform to the official plan. Further, we do not see any concern with lot area, as the dwellings are independently existing and no new development is proposed. And the proposed lots are consistent with the surrounding lot fabric, ensuring that the character of the rural area is preserved. And so we believe that the consents conform to the intent of the official plan. Next slide. So here, what you'll see is on the right side is a diagram of the survey overlaid with a ghost concept plan. So one of the major concerns that came from the RVCA was regarding a viable building envelope on the undersized lot. And so what we've prepared here for the RVCA and what we believe will help to further explain our case as well is a house of a reasonable size proposed along with private services, keeping in mind 30-meter setback from the river, as well as the zoning setbacks.
That timer is just telling you you're pretty much out of time. We'll give you another 30 seconds.
Perfect. If we can go next slide. And this is just to wrap it up. So we are aware that planning staff have requested a number of conditions. There are a few of the conditions that we are not agreeable to or would like to further discuss. And so I will hand it off to my colleague Tim Chatter to wrap up this request.
Thank you. Mr. Chatter.
Good morning, members of the committee. I want to spend any much more time on this. As you said, we've done reciprocal consents in this case to create new title for each of the 2 existing dwellings. So that's why there's 2 applications filed with you. And our comments on this, if the committee is prepared to support it, our only comment to the committee would be we have no objection to conditions that would be notices on title, but anything that would treat this as new development, such as parkland contributions or hydrogeological studies, I don't think they're appropriate. So we'd be happy to discuss those with the committee if you're prepared to support them. So I guess we'd like to hear whether there's any support from the committee, and you'll want to hear from the city staff before we get into that, I bet.
Yep, we do. So to that end, I'd like to ask Mr. Graham to make some comments with respect to this application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the proposal for severing the lot municipally known as 1156 and 1162 River Road does not comply with the official plan. The application was submitted during the transition period of official plans and as such can be evaluated using either the 2003 or 2021 official plan policies, typically defaulting to the more restrictive of the 2. As there was an error in the rural severance section of the 2021 official plan, the severance policies I'll refer to are from the 2003 consolidation. So section 3.7.2 policy 10 states that the retained and severed parcels must be 0.8 hectares in size. The proposal intends to split a 0.45 hectare parcel into 2 smaller parcels about 0.2 and 0.25 hectares. The existing lot itself is already quite small, and the applicant intends to further decrease the size of each lot. The new official plan elaborates upon this policy by stating that as a bare minimum, any new lot, even within a historical settlement, must be no less than 0.4 hectares. In areas of historical settlement, the requirement for minimum size is either to be in keeping with the adjacent lots or the requirement of the Ministry of Environment to support private services. Firstly, this is not a historical settlement area. A historical settlement area includes a variety of land uses in a built-up area as defined by the provincial planning statement. The immediate surrounding area of 1156 River Road is exclusively residential and agricultural, as the majority of rural Ottawa is. The intent of this policy is to recognize clusters of uses that typically included a post office, train stop, and were usually at a crossroads. Nearby Enniskerry is an example of this. This area does not show any of these features, and after consulting the 1880 McGill County Atlas and historical imagery, the lots to the north were vacant as recently as the 1970s, and there was no other uses in the area. As this is not a historical settlement area, the lots must be at least 0.8 hectares to conform with the official plan. The applicant has stated that as part of this application, no new development is proposed. Under the provincial planning statement, development is defined as the creation of a new lot, a change in land use, or the construction of buildings and structures requiring approval under the Planning Act. As the applicant is proposing to create a new lot, it is subject to the official plan and its policies as it is development. Section 4.72 of the official plan describes the policies to create a sustainable pattern of development. Policy 8 states that new lots that rely on private servicing must have a minimum lot size of 0.8 hectares. The planning department must not assume that the current buildings and servicing will remain indefinitely. Therefore, the policies must be applied with the understanding that future development and construction may occur. This application fails to meet the official plan in several areas. As such, the department objects to the application as it does not comply with the policies of the official plan. Thank you.
Thank you. So your comments, Mr. Chatter.
I respect the comments that the city has made in terms of our, what I would call a standard evaluation of vacant land. we are indeed within a unique situation here. We have a situation that has existed for decades with two houses on one lot. And when the city undertook to interpret their own official plan in 2008, when they created this zoning bylaw, they recognized the lot areas that we're speaking about. When you take a look at this strip of over 20 houses, they all are the size that we're promoting and we're recommending to the committee today. When we looked at section 5124 of the Planning Act, when we do our evaluation, it's a bit unique. We don't very often have two houses on one lot. I have to admit that. I don't agree with their interpretation of the OP about the settlement areas, simply because when they determined the implementation of the settlement areas was through their interpretation and the creation of the zoning bylaw, which recognized these sizes of lots. We have two existing dwellings, two wells, two septics, all seem to be functioning fine. We haven't had any slope stability questions. The geotechnical seems to be fine in this area. So I don't have a problem with this. And I think that we do have conformity to the OP. That's my opinion in front of the committee. I believe that to recognize the creation of a new lot, if it were vacant, and we did not have any demonstration that there is a viability, indeed some studies should be done. And we would have done the studies beforehand before making an application. I don't think in this case it was necessary because we've already demonstrated the capacity of the site to handle two dwellings. So that goes to my comments earlier with respect to any conditions coming from the city that provide information and warning clauses on title. I have no problem with that. Those are standard. We apply on all of our consent applications. But for the city to ask for new information about some supposed potential future development, we already have full septic approvals from the OSSO required for any replacement dwellings. We have zoning bylaw conformity requirements. I think we're pretty well covered through our standard processes that we have in the city with respect to development.
Okay, so on the conditions now, you're objecting to condition number 1 having to do with the quality and quantity of groundwater.
No, I have no problem with condition number 1 because it's just a warning clause.
So condition number 2 is road widening, no issues there.
No issues with that either.
Notice on title for sensitive soils.
Again, if it's just a notice, no problem.
Right, independent services.
I believe that's already shown in all the drawings, but I don't have a problem with that because again, it's just existing information.
There you go. An EIS?
I don't think there's one necessary in this case. We're not proposing any new development here. We've got existing house, existing septic, existing driveway. I don't see where we're going to create any problems with respect to the existing environment with respect to this application. So I don't agree with that condition.
Okay. And item number 6, cash in lieu.
If this consent is granted, there is no additional services required for parkland. We're already providing the parkland for the existing dwellings.
Okay. Mr. Graham or Mr. Harrigan, do you have any comments with respect to those two objections to conditions, number 5 and 6?
As for through you, Mr. Chair, the EIS condition applies to development, and under the Planning Act, the creation of new lots is development, so that would still be a requirement. And the cash in lieu condition requires proof of payment. So if it was already paid, then there would be no issue. We just need to receive proof from the applicant that it was paid.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harrigan, you wanted to say something?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I was just going to provide some additional comments on the existing services that do exist there. Just because there are existing services and two houses that exist there does not mean that it's been demonstrated that they are being adequately serviced at this time, or that separating the two lots will maintain those adequate services to it. You have a certain access to the aquifer that is there and a certain size for your septic system and your nitrate dilutions. And just because those two systems may exist there right now does not mean that the nitrate dilutions are working right now. We've seen no evidence of that, nor does it mean that existing future nitrates would also be handled given the smaller lot sizes. So there absolutely is a concern that the existing services are not adequate. And again, too, redevelopment is something we do have to consider. This is a legal non-conforming right, does not give it a right to now separate the two lots to be separated. There's nothing within our policies that recognize that or permit legal non-conforming rights to then permit further deviation from the official plan. It's just not something that can be supported in that nature whatsoever. Really, it's the existing situation is not justification to now deviate further from the official plan and further requirements to demonstrating adequate services.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask our conservation partners if they've got any questions or comments.
Coming through the chair, the Conservation Authority can provide sufficient information to indicate that should the Committee of Adjustment sever the lots, that there be sufficient building envelopes for the properties. There hasn't been the information to indicate whether those uses could be supported. So the Conservation Authority would share the comments that the City of Ottawa has provided. However, the applicants have provided sufficient information to show that there's enough area, which was the identified concern from the applicant. Hydro-G matters are deferred to the city for consent applications in the City of Ottawa, so I'll rely on that process to be undertaken prior to determining if these lots should be developed.
Thank you, Mr. Lalonde. Now I'd like to move on to the panel and ask the panel for their questions or comments. Ms. Chandler.
Couple questions. The smaller of the two houses on the site, is it, I'll say, regularly occupied? Like, is it operating as a house?
Yes, it is.
Okay. The site plan that you pulled up, which showed the potential for redevelopment on that lot, meeting the 30-meter setback with a sewage system envelope, has that been prepared by professional engineer, or who prepared that so that we know the sewage system envelope is adequate?
The outline of the building envelope was prepared by my firm along with the outline of a potential dwelling, and we consulted with a engineer who does septic system designs to arrive at the design for the septic system. So we consulted with Gemtech to confirm.
Okay. There's no zoning bylaw amendment required, correct, in terms of lot size or frontage?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I don't agree this is a historical settlement area. We can agree to disagree on that. But on the balance, by severing this, it does bring some conformity to some aspects in terms of not having two residential uses on one lot. And, you know, if two operating residences exist there, and should it redevelop at some point, so I'm just going to go down two roads. Someone wants to redevelop this site and put a residence there or change something. Right now, I understand it's on a holding tank. That's not a good thing. By severing it, if redevelopment becomes an issue in the future, that will trigger everything, including the 30-meter setback. It will trigger a new septic system. It actually would improve the situation. So by severing it, we actually open up the opportunity to improve the environmental impacts on the site. So I'm not sure about the cash in lieu component. Maybe the agent could explain again why he doesn't feel this severance would trigger a cash in lieu condition.
Certainly, the intent for cash in lieu parkland is for the creation of new development that would increase the requirement for park and parkland dedication requirements for a site. It's our opinion that the requirements for parks have already been established for a few decades, and our ability to go back to prove a payment to a former municipality that may have never collected parkland contributions in the 1960s, because the Planning Act has changed substantively. I don't think that's even feasible for me to be able to meet that condition within 2 years. I don't think I could ever get that documentation for you. So we'd have to pay cash in lieu. So I'm assuming that the city would expect payment, and I just don't think it's appropriate because we already have two dwellings on the site. We're not going to increase the requirement for parks in the municipality, which is the intent for parkland dedication and cash in lieu parkland.
Yeah, I
If
guess
you're, if the committee wants to impose it upon my client, we're certainly not going to appeal it to the tribunal because of that condition. I just prefer it not be there.
understood. So my inclination is that I would actually support this severance, but my understanding of the cash in lieu is that lot creation, which this would be, not dwelling creation, is what triggers the cash in lieu component. So I would leave that condition on. That would be it.
Thank you. Mr. Harrigan, you had a comment?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make a comment about the septic holding tank, and then if it ever does get redeveloped, everything being handled at the building permitting stage. They do have to apply for building permitting stage, but it is not the same thing as our standard provincial guidelines that do require septic nitrate dilutions, which is why we do have concerns with existing lots of record. When they go in and redevelop them, we do have concerns about potential contamination or overburdening of the soils. So really, it could make it worse, and we really do need to, at this point in time, confirm that the lot sizes that are being proposed are absolutely suitable for any redevelopment that may occur on the site, or even just the existing services in terms of their septic treatment at this time. So it is absolutely something that we are concerned about, and it could get worse if the lots are created without proper consideration right now.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
One question, when did the lots merge and how did they merge?
They never merged. They were a creation from literally decades ago. And at some point they were permitted to put on 2 dwellings on the property. So there was never any merge on title. So that's why we're not making an application for any kind of recognition of title.
Okay, so it was always one lot and then somebody put a second shed up and eventually turned into a house or whatever it might be. Yeah, I look at the overhead photo and I understand it doesn't conform to the official plan one day and another. And if we went by the official plan, they wouldn't need a committee of adjustment. I look at the picture of the other cottages along there or houses, and it looks like it fits in the neighborhood. Fine. We have a shortage of housing. We got to get some more housing. I know this is only one and a big problem. I support this application with all the conditions noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vervoort, any comments?
I agree with the comments of members Chandler and Lewis. I think we had agreed that condition number 5 might be deleted, the EIS requirement. It's a bit of a unique circumstance, and I think I agree, especially with Mr. Lewis's comment, that in this case it's appropriate with respect to the existing lots that are there. And also, I also note that the lots do meet the requirements of the existing bylaws. So I'd be in favor of the application with the deletion of the EIS requirement.
Thank you. Looks like we have lost Mr. Otto, so we'll continue to proceed without him. This time I'd like to ask the panel then for approval of this application without condition number 5. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved without condition number 5 of the 6 conditions. Thank you very much, Mr. Chatter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee.
Thank you, Mr. Jarawala. I think is the last application for today. Thank you all very much for your help today, and we'll see you in the new year.